But you look at the game last night. Who got the big hits?
Tyrone Taylor.
Harrison Beta,
That's exactly
Tyrone
right.
Taylor, and probably the hottest hitter on the team right now, Jeff McNeil.
Well, it's about time.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's funny. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about how, the Mets can't hit with runners in scoring position. They were a disaster in Anaheim with runners in scoring. All true. There's no question about it. But it's funny how when you don't watch other teams, you just assume that they're going and they're doing fine, and you see a team that's got Nolan Arenado.
The White Sox aren't doing too well.
Well, we know that, but you got Arenado and Goldschmidt, the corner marks of that
terrible.
Cardinals infield. And unfortunately for me, because Monday night I have cornhole, I could not actually watch the game. I tried to listen as much as I could with the Odyssey app. And then watch the extended highlights this morning. The thing that was littered throughout the highlight package that MLB put out was the Cardinal announcers basically saying the same thing about their team, that this club cannot get a hit with runners in scoring position. And last night, you had 5 innings, where as great as Manaea was, and he was, I ain't taking nothing away from him. You got back-to-back double-digit strikeout performances going 6-7 innings in a day and age where if guys go 5, we celebrate them. They came up lame in every spot with guys in scoring position, and it's just funny how we kill the Mets, and yet if you look around baseball, a lot of other teams have the same problem.
Well, they're not getting it from the 2 big guys. I mean, look, I'm not following the Cardinals all the time, but you look at the numbers of Goldschmidt and Arenado. I mean, these guys what's going on with these guys?
But we wouldn't, not being in St. Louis, would you have even thought of that before yesterday?
No, absolutely not. I knew Goldschmidt wasn't having a great year. I looked at Arenado. He's got 11 home runs. I mean, are you serious?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. He did get a double last night, but still, I mean, look, if those guys aren't going to hit, it's not going to go too well for the Cardinals.
No doubt. But the whole thing with Manaea, though, to start there before we get to the offense that you alluded to, because there were a lot of different things you liked in this game.
Yep.
But Manaea was, when he pitched for Oakland, he was a solid starter. He was never great, but very solid. And I thought when the Mets signed him, he was one of those pieces. I thought with Quintana, I thought with Senga, I thought with Severino, guys that got something to prove, which is why, I've always thought that you would get maybe not dominant starting pitching this year, but I thought it would be good enough for them to give the team a chance to win. Most times they went out and took the mound. You're right. His last couple, Joe, have been as good at back-to-back starts as we've seen.
Yeah. 14 innings, no runs. He struck out double digits in both games. You mentioned that he got out of a couple big jams, got a big double play ball at one point in the game yesterday. He's been phenomenal. I mean, he's pitching like an ace right now.
Yeah. Oh, there's no question.
He's pitching like a number 1 starter right now.
And the other thing too, when you look at what he has done with this, what the rotation has done, is while you wanted them to go out and make bigger moves, and they got Paul Blackburn, and we'll see him again. I guess it's tomorrow. But a good start in Anaheim on Friday night. It makes you also look at the starting rotation. That again, as you go down the stretch, assuming. Severino's interesting because he was terrible his last time out. He only gave you 3 innings, gave up a bunch of runs, and now you're in Colorado tonight. So I am curious to see how he pitches. But putting him aside, you still feel like when you go out, you don't have to win games 12-10, 13-9, something like that. And then on the offense, we talked a lot about, there were a couple of callers yesterday talking about they felt like the Mets were falling back into that if they don't hit the home run ball, they're not scoring runs. Well, they scored in a variety of different ways last night, which was nice to see as well with the wild, a couple of guys on base, you get the wild pitch, and maybe a little sigh of relief as that run comes across. And then the big Tyrone Taylor may not be batting .350. And if he's
been tremendous.
If you're in Mississippi watching baseball, you've never heard of Tyrone Taylor.
Right. I never heard of him until the Mets got him, to be very honest about it.
Exactly. And while he's not going to win a batting title this year, can you think of how many big hits this guy's had this season?
Not only big hits, right? And he made one yesterday too at the wall.
Yep, he did.
I think it was
Makes
in the
it look
8th
easy.
inning. No, Tyrone Taylor's been tremendous. Yeah, look, I got to give Stearns credit for these lower level guys that he's brought in that have been terrific. Harrison Beta's been tremendous. He got a big RBI hit yesterday too to give him a 2-0 lead. He's played great defense. He's been tremendous. Tyrone Taylor's been tremendous. Luis Torrens, this guy, why did the Yankees get rid of this guy? He's good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's playing a lot for a backup catcher.
And a guy that Carlos Mendoza very familiar with.
Right.
And it works.
Yeah.
And you also talk about Iglesias.
Oh my God, Iglesias. OMG, baby.
Yeah. The energy that he brought to this team when he got here, to me, is comparable to the Jazz Chisholm arrival with the Yankees. It seems like it infuses life into a team again. So you're right. Like you just mentioned 3-4 guys. That is not amongst the core of, and Lindor's been great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're not part of this, but when you thought about this team when the season began, you thought about Alonso, you thought about Lindor. You didn't think about JD Martinez because he wasn't
on the team yet.
You thought about Jeff McNeil.
Yep.
And instead, while McNeil is starting to heat up and while Lindor has been phenomenal since moving to the leadoff spot, you are right. Those 3 or 4 other pieces have had almost as big an impact on this team because they've come up big in big spots.
Yeah, no, they really have. I mean, you got to give Stearns credit for bringing those guys in. Obviously, J.D. Martinez, it still bothers me sometimes that a lot of these guys fish for pitches that make me crazy, I got to tell you. And he does as well. But, I mean, not just, his presence in the lineup, but the fact that what he's done in the locker room. And you keep hitting about, these guys, you keep hearing them talk on SNY about how, he's in the locker room, he's in the clubhouse, they're all sitting around, they're talking about hitting. They're talking about hitting on the plane ride coming from Anaheim to St. Louis with JD. So he's been a big factor, too, with this team, no doubt about it. I got to get on Pete for one thing.
Yeah.
And you saw what happened last night.
Yep.
They moved him back to 5. They put Taylor in the 2-hole, right? Carlos puts Taylor in the 2-hole, and he gets the big hit, the big bases-clearing double. But here's what Pete ticked me off last night. He hits this pop fly into right field, okay? And he gets thrown out at second trying to stretch it into a double. If he's running hard, completely out of the box, he would have walked into second base.
Yeah, well,
I mean, come
but
on.
how many times have we seen this over the years? You saw it with Gleyber Torres. Thought he hit a home run. He's jogging to first and ends up with a single instead of a double. It happens all the time.
But the ball, Jerry, the balls
Joe, I'm with
pop
you.
up the right field. Okay,
I'm with you.
Run hard. This ball's
agree.
in no man's land. It's a chance it's going to drop. What are you doing?
And people have mocked
Terrible.
Brandon Nimmo for him sprinting to first base on a walk, but
Right.
You can put that aside. You know what Brandon Nimmo does on every batted ball? He sprints.
He does.
And he
He's
makes
got
the
that Pete
defense
Rose,
make a tough play.
sprint in him. Yep.
He does, but that's a mentality that most of these guys don't have.
Absolutely not.
And you know what a big excuse you will hear a lot of times? Well, it's the dog days of summer. We got to conserve our energy.
Come on.
It's nonsense. You're getting paid a fortune.
Right.
Go out there and play like it. I thought you were going to get on Pete for the comments before the game.
No, I didn't hear the because now somebody said, I think it was Pete was talking about this. They asked him about the contract. Is that what it was before the game? What did they ask him about?
So I didn't hear the question. I saw his answer.
Right.
And his answer was, and I'm paraphrasing, maybe Peter, maybe Eddie, can you see if it's in there in the pregame?
What exactly was the question? Do we know what the question was?
Again, I don't know the question.
Okay.
But it was about, it had something to do with his season, his numbers, and I guess the looming free agency. And I'm paraphrasing, unless Eddie can find it. If not, maybe Peter can find it for us. It was essentially him saying that he is on pace for 40 home runs, that he's an all-star this year, and that he's comfortable with his season, basically, and he's looking forward to the stretch run.
Is he kidding? First of all, he's got 23 home runs. How many games he got left? 50 games?
50.
I think he got
he's
50.
Not on pace for 40.
No way.
He's on pace for 34, 35.
Right, that's it, if he gets to that. Because, he has not had a good year.
He hasn't.
He's only got 57, 58 RBIs, whatever it is. I mean, Pete, who are you kidding?
Some of that I agree with for sure. There's no question. You're going to have opportunities.
Right.
Looking forward to winning baseball.
Right. Yep.
Not going to think too hard about it. Beat myself. I agree with all of that. But what he doesn't need to say is tell you he's on pace for close to 40 home runs.
He's telling you he's having a good year. That's the problem. He's not having a good year.
He is on pace for 30. And I'm looking at the numbers. If I'm doing the math right,
go ahead.
He's on pace
35?
for between 33 and 34 home runs and 90 RBIs.
Yeah. Which is a decent year.
It's okay.
But still, it's a guy that hits 40 every year,
Correct. And it's
also...
120
RBIs last year?
It's also the eye test, Joe.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the one thing, too. You can look, and I said this to you yesterday. I said to you yesterday, at the end of the day, at the end of the season, Alonso is going to finish with 35 and close to 100 RBIs.
Right, you did say that.
On paper, it looks fine. Great? No. Bad? No. Somewhere in the middle, mediocre for him. Maybe not for somebody else. For him, it's mediocre. For Judge, it would be a horrific season.
Mm-hmm.
To sit there and think that is going to get you a gigantic raise as you're getting older, you're kidding yourself. And also to think you've had a good season, yeah, the numbers might look okay, but now let's look and see how he performed in a lot of big spots this season and why this team is winning and where he falls on that list. And I like Pete. I actually
love him.
I want the
Pete.
Mets.
I want him back, of course.
Yes, I think if there's anybody you want to be a career lifelong Met like a David Wright, you want Pete Alonso to start. I agree with all of that. However, he has really hurt himself in terms of what he is worth given this season and his impact on this team this season. And I don't know, I got beat up on social media yesterday for saying the exact same thing yesterday. I don't know how you can argue it if you're watching every day.
No, Pete has not had a good year. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, you can say whatever you want about the numbers. I mean, I'm tired of watching Pete fish at these pitches 10 feet outside. I mean, it makes me crazy. It absolutely does. He hasn't hit with runners in scoring. He's under 200 with runners in scoring position.
I'm aware.
I mean, can we get a big hit? He has not had any protracted run where he's hitting a bunch of home runs like in a week. Mm-hmm. You know, and we haven't seen that at all from him.
Now, that's the one thing that'll make the numbers look better, too. If he does, let's say mid-August.
Well, he's due, I'll tell you that.
Right. He has one of these weeks where he carries the team and has 8 home runs and, 7 or 8 games, and all of a sudden those numbers are going to look better. But again, if you're watching all season long, it's been so inconsistent. You know what he reminds me of? Do you remember when A-Rod was with the Yankees, and he would go through these stretches where he is chewing the gum like he's trying to gnaw through wood because he looks so tense and stressed out.
Right.
And he went through the one stretch where he couldn't buy a hit. And I think they were, I have to remember, I have to look this up. I want to say it was a day game. Well, it was a day game because I remember driving in the car hearing it. It was a day game against the Braves at the stadium where I think A-Rod hit the game-winning home run, and it snapped this huge stretch of just nothingness. And it was like the weight was lifted off his shoulders. I feel like when I'm watching Pete, he looks like he's thinking too much. He looks like he's gripping the bat too tight. And the moment, for whatever reason, seems to have been this season. I'm not talking about anything else. This season looks like it's been too big for him.